Nice to have this opportunity, Sampo from Valmet. I'm heading the digital transformation and operations development in one of our business areas, packaging. Packaging that is then a quite active field amongst our corporate customers. And even the kind of topic is the business networks. I will be more focusing on the kind of the role of a supplier. As we are a business partner for customers, but we indeed are a supplier to many, and then sharing some insights on the Valmet as a company, but then also the ways that we are leveraging the business network as a means to really kind of drive customer excellence and value generation with our corporate customers. And briefly about Valmet. So we are a global company, headquartered actually here in this building and employ roughly 18,500 professionals across the globe, variety of countries, close to our customers, which basically means that our customer base is also very much of global nature and the kind of the countries where we operate with our customers actually it's then even more multifolded. So that's the kind of the state and we have a lot of industry history in the company. So we've been around. We kind of work with different industries that I will be telling a bit more about then later on. So about the customer base, so you might see kind of some familiar corporation names. They typically are multinational, international, based out of variety of countries, different amongst themselves. So not kind of same. So everybody has their own kind of spot, their own place. It's a quite, let's say, fierce competition amongst these industries that who will strive and who will succeed, and things are happening, mergers, acquisitions, who pivots to which direction and so on. And we of course are in the mix as a corporation to kind of really navigate in this field. And so is SAP and SAP Business Network as well. So what we do, so just kind of give a bit of a flavor on the kind of things. So we are a technology company that supports our customers then over the life cycle of the assets and the kind of solutions we deliver. Might resonate to some of the people in the audience. So many kind of industrial companies are of such nature. So what we do is both then these kind of capital type of investments, big projects. So basically turnkey solutions to industrial companies that our customers are. Big biomills, packaging type of solutions, processes, typical big projects, very diverse kind of supply chains and the duration of this kind of project from sales to delivery can be from 1 year to 3 years. And then the kind of this lifetime care starts. And typically the age of these investments that our customers do, their lifetime is decades, so several decades, which of course means that we really want to be there as a lifelong partner, really kind of supporting our customers with their kind of excellence in the things that they do. We have then, I would say, diverse type of businesses, so the customers are not same. So the biomaterial solutions and services, this is mainly on the pulp and energy producers, packaging and paper producers, and the ones who are making then tissue type of products. So basically the kind of things that you see in your everyday lives, that's the kind of end products of our customers. And we have the kind of means and the processes and the technology to kind of make the magic happen. But then really the kind of services side is then where we see the kind of, the volumes and the transactions kind of happening. So especially in the spares, consumables, process type of parts. So that's where the kind of, there is this continuous type of work with our kind of customers to kind of, be the OEM of their preference to kind of, use the kind of technology that we have and the technology that we are developing. in their kind of maintenance operations. And that's also then very much the kind of sweet spot if we think about then where we have the kind of majority of this business network activity. It's actually around the aftermarket business. And the presentation is a bit two-folded. So this is more of kind of giving the kind of general overview on the digital commerce solutions that we have, and then we will be breaking out into kind of latter part then that is more focusing on the technical type of topics and then maybe more in depth on the kind of challenges we face. It's partially due to kind of the setup of this meeting today. So we heard from Aki and SAP that the customers are active towards their suppliers in the ways that they are kind of digitalizing and finding their kind of means to be excelling in their operational efficiency and also kind of making the most out of their kind of doings, and that's what we see as a supplier as well. So we are being actively approached by our customers regarding the kind of ways that we can collaborate them in different areas of whether it's then bidding or offering or then kind of just kind of answering to their orders through these channels of their preference and choice. And typically it is exactly like we heard from the audience that there isn't this kind of a big push from the customers that let's get integrated. I think that they are in the kind of maturity where they are kind of more happy that they are in the midst of their own internal transformation, meaning kind of introducing, implementing the business networks, maybe doing their kind of centralization of their procurement and buying and then it's kind of a great opportunity to be there to help them if and when we can be there to kind of really tap in and connect with these kind of automated and integrated solutions. The customers are not the same, so it's very different landscape. Even though SAP Business Network is the world leading network, it's not the only one. And even though SAP is most probably the most common ERP backbone, it's not the only one. So therefore it's kind of a mix of kind of things that how we navigate in this change. And we have been on a journey to develop the solution and business offering that it's meeting a variety of these different customer needs and requirements that they have. But it's a journey and I will be kind of sharing a bit about that journey that we have taken. So typically what we kind of see that are then the areas of digitalization in the customer supplier processes. So there's variety of things, whether it's then invoice automation, e-invoicing, different type of B2B marketplaces, or then different type of sourcing suites being used. And then there is this kind of B2B type of solutions that is then really about these procurement portals and buying related things with a certain type of content that we went about. And it also kind of, tells here the story that it's not a kind of uniform thing. Typically a single technology platform doesn't kind of, have the full coverage.
It would be a dream.
It would be a dream. We have a dream, but getting there. And also then I would say that the maturity of the solutions in place, it varies as well. So we can be honest that, SAP Business Network, I think that, it's good stuff. So in a way, it's kind of, having a lot of capabilities. It's undergoing a kind of continuous development. It supports a variety of things. If we take kind of, other kind of, alternative type of network solutions, they're a bit different. So, it also means that we, as a supplier, we need to adapt to a variety of kind of, alternatives that we see across the market and that what our customers are using. Also, if we take this B2B type of solutions and one might call this the kind of documentation or the content that we see typically where we kind of in this integrated type of approach focus very much upon is around the purchase orders. That's then quite logical and the kind of close being type of topics there. Then invoice management. Many companies like we as well, we are having a separate type of corporate approach to this kind of invoicing that is a corporate standard, whereas then it's kind of having some customers being active on requesting also the kind of invoice processing through the business networks. But it's still a kind of marginal amount of customers requesting that. So it's kind of also evolving what's the kind of things that we are driving through the B2B solutions with our customers. Whether that is being then manual or integrated type of processes. So where we want to be and where we are already kind of taking the steps. So we really want to be excelling in the kind of customer excellence and make the buying easy. Make the collaboration easy with Valmet and our preferred kind of supplier status with our corporate customers, and we want to be the strategic enabler for really kind of creating shared value. Because at the end of the day, this is what the business network work is, that it's about shared value generation. So it's not something that one kind of can drive things without the other to be successful. And our ambition is to kind of make procurement simple, make buying simple for the customers, and really connecting our customers through the industry-leading buying platforms. We help them to kind of work faster, smarter, and more secure. And also the thing is that we don't want to kind of disrupt the customers' internal processes. So in a way, it means that we need to be there supporting their preferred channel of choice, and that's the way that we have built our approach then. And the benefits using automated procurement processes or improving the procurement processes in general is then saving time and cost of both parties and making it kind of qualified, simple and seamless, and eliminating errors and having the real-time visibility and being then the trusted partner of choice.
Excuse me, Sampo.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through the process of selecting the SAP Business Network? Where did you get the initial idea of Spark, and how did it go from?
So actually it's then, because we are a customer-centric company, so the SAP Business Network, us being a supplier, it's actually a choice of our customers. So I think that's the kind of differing. If you are in a role of a customer, they need to do the initial type of evaluation and selection. But if you are a supplier, and like we are a supplier to many, then of course we need to be there where our customers are. So it's not the choice that we can make, but of course we can be there to help our customers to make the choice. If that's the kind of start of the dialogue where we can enter.
So do you have customers who are not using SAP Business Network but something else, and are you engaged in those?
Yes. So there are, if we think this kind of competitive space of SAP, so you have then Coupa, you have Jäger, and then you have kind of other niche type of players. If you go to kind of Asia Pacific, Japan, you have a kind of plenitude of kind of smaller players, and but I would say that the kind of most common things that we face in our kind of customer engagements are SAP Business Network, Jäger, and Coupa.
The interesting question is actually when you started this process and from customer engagement perspective, how did you choose the first customer, and what led to it? Did you have like
I-
a long?
Yeah, I'll come back to this one. This one in
That's
a
very
bit.
interesting.
In a bit, and I'll kind of share the insights on the kind of things. But for us, the kind of digital commerce is not it's not the one solution. So it's a kind of it's the solution offering and the ways that we have organized around it. So you have the web shops, you have then the kind of buying platforms that you are connecting with from the kind of customers that we are of course administering at our end. Our part of the network. Then you have then the different type of customer portals, more in-depth type of installed-based type of realizations through interactive parts catalogs. And then you have these kind of integration, punch-out type of means, capabilities that, how you orchestrate and make the kind of different information available then in the right places. And also then I'd say that the integrations part is then key to success then also when we are looking into the kind of different flows that we need to kind of have in place. And that's the part in the kind of technical part that I think that we can have a bit of a open dialogue about how things are. And one thing here is then a bit of a busy picture, but it's kind of simplified illustration of how is the kind of business networks that is here marked as this kind of gray box there, but you are kind of introducing these networks to a existing type of ways that you are having your customer support, your customer engagements. You are having your ways of kind of managing your key customers, the different teams, the roles. Whether it's then like in our case, we have a mill team, so dedicated set of people looking after our daily and weekly and monthly and yearly needs of our kind of key customers and mills, and how is that kind of relationship also being leveraged then to kind of boost these more seamless and streamlined type of ways to operate. And typically in the past, so we have had these different type of customer support centers, the kind of like we are based around the globe. So a lot of different type of channels, whether it's then phone calls or emails or different type of portal type of things where you're putting in your customer requests. I think that we have then 100 plus type of different type of channels actually. And it's the reality in most of the global companies and it's just the kind of question that how do you in an efficient way tap in to this kind of existing processes so that you have a starting point that you are not disrupting at one go, but you are making a kind of flow with the kind of customers that you kind of get them, whether they are working first manually with you, how you kind of route the kind of network type of activities to your existing support processes, and how you gradually build from there this more kind of integrated experience. That has been our approach actually in the ways that we have gone about this transformation. A bit about the numbers. So we actually started looking into this matter in the late part of 21, early parts of 22. So seeing that we started to hear noise from our organization that we are getting quite a lot of kind of activities then, especially in North America then from our customer base regarding this business network back in the day, Ariba usage. And we started to kind of explore where we really are. And here comes one of these things that why it's important that we have a good relationship with SAP is that how can you get visibility on your company's status in the business network as a supplier when you kind of when you're kind of starting to generate the interest that hey, we have active units 30, but passive activities over 100. So that was the kind of starting point because we didn't have any governance in place. And I think that again, I would dare to say that this is probably the starting point for most of these multi-customer type of suppliers. And then, what we started to do is to kind of, explore where we stand, take forward this kind of administrative type of effort and kind of, getting a grip on the kind of things, understanding what's our position, what's the volumes, what's the customers. And this analytics is actually something that when you're starting as a supplier, you don't get this without SAP. So you really need to have then a good support from the SAP organization to kind of, bring you the visibility. And for us, we were lucky that we kind of got the visibility quite soon. We found means to kind of get connected. And I think that it's still something that I would say that it's not that obvious how this kind of supplier onboarding goes. But I would say that you have in SAP great resources to support it once you get connected. So that's the starting point. Also, these networks, I think that it's from a supplier perspective, it's an interesting mix. You have then buyer-funded type of business networks, and then you have those that you actually then having the kind of transactional fees and different kind of ways to cap, different ways to go about the things, and then it's actually coming to a interesting question that how you're kind of running your parent-child type of kind of setups and how you are actually navigating with that one in the ways that you are kind of having your corporate structures, your businesses, your local regulations where you need to book the orders and kind of where you need to do the invoicing. So it's kind of there's, like Jenny was saying, there's things that we need to consider, and it's not always that simple. So where we are today, so we have done a lot of cleansing. So idle and non-active accounts have been removed. We have improved our posture in the ways that we are managing our network setup. So, like we heard that, how is Valmet seen as a supplier to our business network operating customers? So we are not seeing only as one kind of company. We have kind of quite a lot of active networks, but we have done this kind of domain type of locks. So at least Valmet is the only one who manages Valmet. So tips and tricks type of things, but but clearly it is a good one to have administration of your overall posture and understand your network stakeholders within the kind of company. We have active customers, so we can see that it's been, booming. So it means that in the past years, so we have been seeing significant growth in our customer activity that we are kind of, connected with, and most of them are still manual type of relationships. So we are kind of, in those cases doing a lot of rerouting, so manual integrations from the business network to our own customer service channels. But we are having an increasing amount of also these integrated customers, and that's then the way we want to kind of continue. But there's a kind of, some topics about this getting integrated with our customers that I will be talking a bit more in the technical part. And one might say about the business volumes that we are kind of, getting, especially in our aftermarket business through the business network and other business networks. It's, without telling how much it is, but it's significant. So it's a big share of the kind of, the transactions and the business that we do, and therefore kind of, really kind of, seeing this as one of those really important type of business channels and business networks is clearly the kind of, message that we have kind of gotten across the company. And looking forward with opportunities and together with the SAP Business Network, so we really want to kind of grow and maintain existing business, and that's the kind of we have now in Valmet. We have a new strategy, Lead the Way. It's really about kind of being ambitious with our business growth and being ambitious also kind of making our customers succeed, and clearly this is the kind of activity area that we go about, and I would say also then pursuing increasing the level of automation is there, and also exploring more and more opportunities through kind of new capabilities such as catalogs and others, that when it makes sense to go about the things. And in general, we are in the beginning of the journey, not ready. So customer and further Valmet business onboarding continues, and really us looking into kind of opportunities to really widen the scope of using the business network.